She slipped him a receipt that wasn't a bill, it was a warning that would get her killed if he read it too late. His fiancée laughed beside him, completely relaxed, because she thought the hit was already guaranteed. What she didn't know was that the waitress had already seen everything. If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Alright, let's get back into it. Claire Genet was standing inches from a man everyone feared, while the woman beside him was setting up his death. The folded receipt sat next to his water glass like it belonged there. Just another piece of paper on white linen. Except this one had 7 words that could get her killed. Your fiancé sold you out. They're waiting outside. Any dessert for you this evening? Her voice came out steady, professional, like she wasn't betraying every instinct that told her to stay invisible. Stay small. Stay out of other people's wars. Romeo Leroy didn't look up from the leather-bound menu. His tattooed fingers, the kind of ink that told stories Claire would never be allowed to hear, traced down the wine list with the same careful attention he'd given everything since he sat down. Dark hair slicked back perfectly, sharp jawline shadowed with stubble. The kind of face that belonged in films, not restaurants where real danger wore tailored suits. Beside him, Elisa Chabot smiled at her phone, her emerald green dress catching the low amber light like liquid silk. She laughed at something on her screen, the sound bright and careless, floating over the quiet murmur of wealth that filled Côte Lumière on a Friday night. Behind them, the city spread out through floor-to-ceiling glass walls. The financial district glittered like scattered diamonds against black velvet. Every table in this place cost more than Claire's monthly rent. Every person here belonged to a world where she was decoration present, useful, and utterly forgettable. She should have stayed forgettable. The chocolate soufflé, Elisa said without looking up, her dark waves falling over one shoulder as she typed. And 2 espressos, Claire nodded, her hands clasped professionally in front of her black vest. Of course. I'll have that right out. She turned to leave, pulse hammering in her throat. Wait. Romeo's voice stopped her cold, deep, quiet, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to command attention. Claire turned back, heart stuttering. He was looking at her now, really looking with eyes that seemed to calculate 1,000 variables in the space of a breath. Dark eyes. Unreadable. His gaze dropped to the folded receipt beside his glass. Time stretched like pulled glass. Then his fingers moved, casual, deliberate. He picked up the note as if it were nothing more than a bill, unfolded it beneath the table's edge where Elisa couldn't see, and read. Claire watched his expression for any crack, any tell. Nothing changed. But his fingers went still against the paper, completely, unnaturally still. When he looked up again, his face remained a perfect mask of calm. The soufflé sounds excellent, he said evenly. Thank you. Claire's throat tightened. She managed a professional smile and walked away on legs that felt like they might buckle. Behind her, Elisa laughed again at something on her phone, completely oblivious. 12 minutes earlier, Claire had been in the service hallway near the loading dock, stealing 30 seconds of air between the dinner rush and dessert service. Her feet ached in the required black heels. Her lower back was one sharp twist away from spasm. She was counting down the minutes until close when she saw Elisa Chabot slip outside through the staff exit, the fiancé. The woman in the green dress who'd spent the entire evening smiling at her phone instead of the man across from her. Guests didn't use service doors, especially not women in $1,000 dresses and jewelry that probably cost more than Claire's car. Claire should have ignored it. Should have gone back inside, refilled water glasses, smiled at people who didn't see her, but something felt wrong, so she followed. The alley behind Côte Lumière wasn't the kind of place someone like Elisa belonged. Narrow, dim. The kind of shadows that swallowed sound and spat out trouble. Elisa stood near a black sedan with tinted windows, phone pressed to her ear, her back to the restaurant. Claire stayed in the doorway, half hidden by the dumpster enclosure, and told herself she'd leave in 5 seconds. Then she heard Elisa's voice. He's inside. Pause. Her tone dropped, smooth and certain. Table 12. By the glass wall. You'll see him the second he stands. Claire's pulse spiked. Another pause. Then Elisa laughed soft, intimate. Nothing like the performance she'd given inside. I told you I'd handle it. He doesn't suspect a thing. She switched to rapid French. Claire caught pieces de hors. Outside. Attendre. Wait. Quand il sort. When he leaves. Then one word. Crystal clear. Romeo. Claire pressed her back against the brick, heart hammering against her ribs. Two men in dark coats emerged from the opposite side of the alley. One of them handed Elisa a slim envelope. She tucked it into her designer purse without counting it, kissed him once on the mouth long, familiar, and slipped back toward the restaurant entrance like she was returning from a smoke break. The men didn't leave. They stayed in the shadows, eyes fixed on the glass walls of the restaurant, watching, waiting, for him to walk out. Now, back in the dining room, Claire moved through her section on autopilot. She smiled at table 9, refilled wine at table 14, cleared plates at table 6. Every movement mechanical while her mind screamed. She glanced toward table 12. Romeo had placed the note face down on his lap. His posture hadn't changed. He reached for his water glass with the same measured calm he'd shown all evening. But something was different now. The way he held himself, the angle of his shoulders, like a predator that had just caught a scent. Elisa set her phone down and finally looked at him, smiling. "You've barely touched your wine. I'm pacing myself," Romeo said smoothly. "You're always so controlled." She reached across the table, fingers trailing over his wrist. "Sometimes I wonder what it would take to make you lose control." His smile was small, polite, and didn't reach his eyes. "I suppose we'll never know." Something flickered across Elisa's face. Uncertainty. Just for a second. Then it was gone, replaced by that same bright, careless smile. Claire retreated to the service station, hands shaking as she entered their dessert order into the tablet. She'd done it. She'd warned him. Now she just had to survive whatever came next. Through the glass walls, the city glittered on, indifferent to the war about to erupt inside its most expensive restaurant. The countdown had already begun. Romeo Leroy had survived 17 years in a world where hesitation meant death. He'd learned early that survival wasn't about strength or speed, it was about control. Control over your body, your expression, your breathing, the micro-movements that betrayed fear to those trained to see it. So when he read the 7 words on that folded receipt, his heart rate didn't spike, his pupils didn't dilate, his jaw didn't clench. He simply processed. "Your fiancé sold you out. They're waiting outside." 7 words. A stranger's handwriting, delivered by a waitress whose name he didn't know. It could be a lie. A test. A competitor trying to destabilize him before a meeting. In his world, paranoia was currency, and trust was the fastest way to a shallow grave. But Romeo hadn't survived this long by dismissing warnings. He set the note face down on his lap and reached for his water glass. The crystal felt cool against his palm. Solid. Real. He took a measured sip, his eyes tracking the restaurant's reflection in the glass wall beside him. 3 tables over, a man in a dark suit had been nursing the same whiskey for 40 minutes. Near the bar, another man stood with his back to the room, phone pressed to his ear, never ordering. By the kitchen entrance, 2 more pretending to wait for the restroom, but their eyes kept drifting toward table 12. Romeo had noticed them when he'd arrived, filed them away as potential problems. Now they crystallized into certainty. 4 positions, clean sightlines, exit routes covered. They weren't here for dinner. "You've barely touched your wine." Elisa's voice cut through his thoughts, light and teasing. He looked at her, then really looked. The woman he'd been sleeping beside for 6 months. Dark hair in perfect waves, smooth olive skin. That green dress that had cost him 3,000 euros when she'd pointed it out in a boutique window last month. She was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful. Deliberate, polished, designed to be desired. Right now, she was smiling at him with those full lips, her fingers trailing over his wrist like she had every right to touch him. "I'm pacing myself," he said smoothly. "You're always so controlled." Her smile widened, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Sometimes I wonder what it would take to make you lose control." Romeo studied her face, the slight tension at the corners of her mouth, the way her left hand kept drifting toward her purse. The phone she'd been glued to all evening, now face down on the table. She was nervous, not guilty nervous, not caught nervous. Anticipation nervous, like someone waiting for a show to start. "I suppose we'll never know," he said, his voice a shade too cold. The flicker returned. Uncertainty, just for a heartbeat. She pulled her hand back and laughed, but it sounded hollow against the restaurant's low hum. "You're in a strange mood tonight, am I?" Before she could answer, Romeo shifted in his seat, a casual movement, reaching into his jacket pocket as if searching for his phone. His fingers found the slim device there, pressed twice against the side, a silent signal. 2 quick vibrations, universal code among his men. Situation developing. Stand by. Somewhere in this restaurant, or outside it, or in the building across the street. His security would receive that signal. They'd move into position. Quietly. Efficiently. The way they'd been trained. Romeo had never attended a public dinner without backup. Not once in 17 years. The question wasn't whether his men were here. The question was whether Elisa knew that. He set his phone on the table, screen dark. I'm going to the restroom. It was a test. Elisa's eyes widened slightly. Now? Our dessert will be here any minute. It won't take long. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. Around them, the restaurant continued its expensive symphony. Crystal against crystal. Soft laughter. The sommelier describing a vintage to table 7. But Romeo felt the shift. The man by the bar straightened slightly. One of the men near the kitchen entrance turned, tracking Romeo's movement. The man at table 3 set down his whiskey, hand sliding inside his jacket. Elisa's smile was frozen now, her fingers white-knuckled around her wine glass. Romeo, I'll be right back, Sherry. The endearment was glass-sharp. He walked toward the restrooms with the same measured calm he brought to everything. Past table 11, past the sommelier's station, past the man who'd been pretending to wait by the kitchen entrance and was now speaking rapid French into a phone. Romeo caught 2 words. Il bouge. He's moving. 3 meters from the restroom door. Romeo stopped. He turned to face the dining room, hands relaxed at his sides, and smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd just realized he was holding all the cards. Then the lights flickered. Just once, barely noticeable to most diners. But Romeo saw what it meant. The man by the bar stiffened. The 2 near the kitchen exchanged glances. At table 3, the suited man's hand emerged from his jacket empty, but tense. They'd felt it too. That subtle shift in the room's energy. The sense that something had changed in the mathematics of violence. Romeo walked back to his table. Elisa watched him approach, confusion cracking through her practiced composure. I thought you were... Changed my mind. He sat down, smoothing his napkin across his lap. The folded receipt was still there, pressed against his thigh. You know how I am. Controlled. Her laugh was brittle. Yes, you are. The waitress, the one who'd slipped him the note, appeared with their desserts. Her hands were steady now, but Romeo could see the fear underneath, the way her eyes darted toward the exits, the slight tremor in her breathing. She'd risked something by warning him. He needed to know why. As she set the chocolate soufflé in front of Elisa, Romeo caught her gaze, held it for just a second, long enough to communicate something he hoped she'd understand. I know, and I'm ready. She gave the smallest nod and retreated. Elisa picked up her fork, but she wasn't looking at the dessert. She was looking at Romeo, and for the first time all evening, the mask had slipped completely. You know, she whispered. Romeo lifted his espresso cup, the porcelain warm against his fingers. I always know, Elisa. The lights flickered again, and this time, they didn't come back on. The restaurant plunged into darkness. For 3 seconds, Côte Lumière existed in absolute black. No emergency lights. No phone screens glowing. Just the distant glitter of the city through glass walls and the sudden, sharp intake of breath from 60 wealthy diners who'd never experienced a moment they couldn't control. Then the emergency lighting kicked in dim, red-tinged, casting everyone in the color of arterial blood. Claire hit the floor. Not by choice. A hand had grabbed her vest and yanked her down behind the service station as the darkness fell. She landed hard on her knees, pain shooting up her thighs, her shoulder slamming against the wood cabinet. Stay down. The voice belonged to André, the head sommelier, a rail-thin man in his 50s who'd never spoken more than 3 words to her in 8 months. Now his hand was iron on her shoulder, his body positioned between her and the dining room like a human shield. What's happening? Claire's voice came out strangled. Something very expensive, André said quietly. Around them, chaos erupted in slow motion. A woman screamed high-pitched, genuine terror. Chairs scraped, glass shattered. Someone shouted in Russian. Another voice yelled for everyone to stay calm, which only amplified the panic. Through the red-lit gloom, Claire saw movement at table 12. Romeo hadn't moved. He sat exactly as he had when the lights died, espresso cup still raised halfway to his lips, his expression carved from stone. Elisa had pushed back from the table, her chair tipped at an angle, her face a mask of confusion and something else. Fear. Real fear. The man from the bar was moving now, hand inside his jacket, pushing through panicked diners toward the exit. One of the men near the kitchen had produced a phone, its screen dark, speaking urgently into it like he was trying to reach someone who wasn't answering. The third man, the one from table 3, was reaching for something in his coat when he froze mid-movement. Someone had put a gun to the base of his skull. The someone was a woman in a server's uniform identical to Claire's, except Claire had never seen her before. "Hands on the table," the woman said pleasantly, in French. Slowly, the man complied, his face draining of color in the emergency lighting. All around the restaurant, Claire began to see them. People who'd been invisible minutes ago, now moving with lethal precision. A busboy who wasn't a busboy blocked the main entrance, hands loose at his sides in a stance that promised violence. A woman in an evening gown had produced a compact pistol from her purse and was calmly directing diners away from the windows. Near the kitchen, a man in chef's whites had somehow materialized a tactical baton. They'd been here the whole time, hidden in plain sight, watching, waiting. Romeo's people. Mon Dieu, André breathed beside her. He really did come prepared. At table 12, Romeo finally moved. He set down his espresso cup with a soft click, pulled his napkin from his lap, and folded it precisely on the table. Then he stood, buttoning his suit jacket like he was preparing to leave after a pleasant meal. He looked directly at Elisa. "You should have asked for more money," he said quietly. "If you're going to sell someone out, at least make it worth the risk." Elisa's face crumpled. "Romeo, I don't." The single word carried enough weight to silence her. "We'll talk, but not here." Outside, through the glass walls, Claire saw it happen. The men in the alley, the ones who'd been waiting for Romeo to walk out, the ones who'd paid Elisa to set him up, were on the ground, surrounded, hands behind their heads. Dark figures moved around them like shadows given form, efficient and silent. It had taken less than 2 minutes. The ambush had been ambushed. A new voice cut through the restaurant's chaos, amplified and authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. This is a private security matter. You are not in danger. Please stay seated and follow the instructions of our personnel." The voice came from a man who'd just entered through the kitchen, tall, silver-haired, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than Claire's annual salary. He moved like someone accustomed to command, and the panic in the room began to crystallize into confused compliance. Romeo walked past Claire's hiding spot without looking at her, heading toward a private door behind the sommelier's station. The silver-haired man fell into step beside him. "Clean?" Romeo asked. "4 inside, 6 outside, all contained, no shots fired." "Police?" 10 minutes out. We'll be gone in 5. Romeo nodded. Then he stopped, turned, and looked directly at Claire. She was still on the floor, André's hand still on her shoulder, her vest twisted and her knees screaming. She must have looked like exactly what she was, a terrified waitress who'd stumbled into something she couldn't begin to understand. But Romeo's eyes held something she hadn't expected: recognition. "Bring her," he said to the silver-haired man. "Sir?" "The waitress. Bring her. Now." Claire's stomach dropped. "No, not a request." Romeo's voice was soft but absolute. Then he disappeared through the private door. The silver-haired man approached, and despite every instinct screaming at her to run, Claire knew there was nowhere to go. She was surrounded by armed professionals in a locked restaurant. The police were coming, and she'd just become the most important witness to whatever this was. André released her shoulder. "Go," he said quietly. "You don't want to be here when the authorities arrive with questions." 2 of Romeo's people, a man and a woman, both wearing server uniforms, flanked Claire as she stood on shaking legs. They didn't grab her, didn't threaten. They simply guided her toward the private door with the polite insistence of people escorting a VIP. Behind her, the restaurant was a tableau of frozen chaos. Elisa still sat at table 12, mascara running down her face, staring at nothing. The men who'd come to kill Romeo were being quietly zip-tied and photographed. Wealthy diners clutched their pearls and phones, already crafting the story they'd tell at tomorrow's brunch. And Claire walked through the door into a hallway she'd never seen before, following a man she'd saved without understanding why. The countdown hadn't ended. It had just begun. The private room behind Côte Lumière was nothing like the dining room's elegant opulence. No glass walls, no city views. Just exposed brick, a single metal table, and overhead lighting that was too bright and too cold. Elisa Chabot sat in a chair that wasn't bolted down but might as well have been. Her green dress looked garish under the fluorescent lights, her carefully applied makeup now streaked with mascara that had bled into the creases around her eyes. Her hands were folded in her lap, fingers twisted together so tightly the knuckles had gone white. She looked small, broken. Romeo stood across from her, leaning against the brick wall with his arms crossed. Watching her the way a scientist might observe a specimen under glass. Detached, clinical. The silver-haired man, whose name Claire still didn't know, stood by the door, equally silent. Claire had been placed in a corner, flanked by the two servers who weren't servers. Nobody had told her why she was here. Nobody had explained anything. She was simply expected to stand and watch, a witness to whatever was about to unfold. "I loved you." Elisa's voice cracked on the last word, her French accent thicker with emotion. "You have to believe that." Romeo didn't move. "I don't have to believe anything. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Tears spilled over, fresh tracks cutting through her ruined makeup. "He said he promised he would only talk to you. Negotiate. That's all. Just negotiate." "Negotiate." Romeo's voice was flat, with 6 armed men and exit routes blocked. "I didn't know about that part. I swear to you, Romeo, I didn't know." "Stop." He pushed off the wall, taking a single step toward her. Just one. But Elisa flinched like he'd struck her. "Don't insult me with lies. Not now." The silence that followed was suffocating. Elisa's shoulders shook. She pressed her hands to her face, sobbing quietly into her palms. For a moment, she looked genuinely devastated, lost. Then Romeo spoke again, softer this time. "Tell me about him." Elisa's hands dropped. Her eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. "What? Your ex. The one who set this up. Tell me about him." Something shifted in Elisa's expression. The grief remained, but underneath it, Claire saw something else, something older and more complicated. "His name is Julien Mercier," Elisa whispered. "We were together for 4 years. He left me 3 years ago. No explanation. Just gone." Her voice dropped lower. "I thought I'd never see him again. Until 2 months ago." Elisa's fingers twisted together again. "He showed up at my apartment. He said he'd made a mistake. That leaving me was the biggest regret of his life. That he'd spent 3 years trying to become worthy of me." Romeo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And you believed him." "I wanted to." The words came out broken. "God, I wanted to so badly. Do you know what it's like to be left without answers? To spend years wondering what you did wrong? So you slept with him. It wasn't a question." Elisa's face crumpled. "Yes. While you were with me. Yes. And when did he ask you to betray me?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Elisa was crying openly now, mascara and foundation mixing into a grotesque mask. "The 3rd time," he said. "He said you were the reason he'd left. That he'd discovered who you were, what you were, and he couldn't risk being connected to me anymore. He said you'd been hunting him for years. That you'd kill him if you knew we'd been together." Romeo's expression didn't change. "That's almost true. He said if I helped him, he'd take me away. That we could disappear together. Start over somewhere safe." Elisa's voice broke completely. "He said he'd been building resources, making connections. That all he needed was one conversation with you face to face to end the war. And you believed that too, I thought." Elisa wiped at her face uselessly, smearing makeup across her cheek. "I thought if I could bring you two together, maybe it could actually end. Maybe we could all walk away." Romeo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was almost gentle. "You were never going to walk away, Elisa. Neither of you were." "What do you mean?" "Julien Mercier has been trying to kill me for 6 years. Not negotiate, kill. He's failed 4 times. Romeo's eyes were dark, endless. "The only reason he came back to you was because he discovered you were sleeping beside me every night. You weren't his 2nd chance at love. You were his 5th chance at murder." The words landed like bullets. Elisa's face went slack. "No. He used you. Completely. The money he gave you was a down payment on your complicity. The sex was manipulation. The promises were lies." Romeo crouched down so he was at eye level with her. "And the moment I walked out of that restaurant tonight, you would have been a liability. Do you understand what happens to liabilities in his world?" Elisa was shaking her head slowly, denial and realization warring across her features. "He wouldn't. He already ordered it." Romeo nodded to the silver-haired man, who produced a phone and tapped the screen twice. Audio filled the small room a recording, crystal clear. Julien's voice. "Once Leroy's down, clean up the woman too. Make it look like she was caught in the crossfire." Another voice. "The fiancée. Julien. She's a witness. And she's stupid. We can't risk her talking." The recording ended. Elisa's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Her hands flew to her throat like she couldn't breathe, like the walls were closing in. No, 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 no. He was going to kill you, Elisa. Romeo stood, straightening his suit jacket. The only reason you're still breathing is because a waitress decided to slip me a note. Elisa's eyes found Claire's across the room. The look was hollow, destroyed. Claire felt something twist in her chest. Not pity, exactly, but recognition. She'd just watched a woman realize she'd sold her life for a lie. Romeo walked to the door, then paused. You're free to go. Elisa looked up sharply. What? Leave. Tonight. Disappear. I don't care where. His voice was ice. But if I ever see you again, if you ever speak my name to anyone, there won't be a warning. Romeo. We're done, Elisa. He walked out without looking back. The silver-haired man gestured toward a second door. There's a car waiting downstairs. It'll take you wherever you want to go. Elisa sat frozen for a moment longer. Then she stood on trembling legs and walked toward her exit, a ghost in a green dress. She didn't look at Claire as she passed. And just like that, she was gone. Claire stood in the corner of the cold brick room, her uniform vest twisted from when she'd been pulled to the floor, her knees still aching from the impact. The door Elisa had disappeared through clicked shut with a finality that made Claire's stomach turn. She was alone now. Alone with Romeo Leroy and his people in a room she hadn't known existed, in a situation she couldn't begin to process. The silver-haired man glanced at Romeo. Sir, we need to move. Police will be inside the main restaurant in 3 minutes. Give me 2. Romeo turned to Claire for the first time since Elisa had left. You, come here. It wasn't a request. Claire's legs felt like water, but she forced herself to move. The 2 server guards stepped aside, letting her pass. She stopped 3 feet from Romeo, close enough to see the fine details of his neck tattoo, some kind of script in a language she didn't recognize, and far enough to run if running would do any good, which it wouldn't. Up close, Romeo Leroy was even more imposing than he'd been from across the dining room, taller than she'd realized, broader through the shoulders. His dark eyes tracked her with an intensity that made her feel dissected. What's your name? His voice was quieter now, without the cold edge he'd used on Elisa. Claire Genet. How long have you worked at Côte Lumière? 8 months. You followed Elisa outside. It wasn't a question. Why? Claire's throat was dry. She went through the staff exit. Guests don't do that. It felt wrong. So you followed her into an alley. Romeo tilted his head slightly. That was dangerous. I know. Do you? He took a step closer. You overheard a murder plot. You saw her take payment. You heard them confirm I was the target. And then you came back inside and warned me. Another step. Why? The question hung between them like a test. Claire's hands were shaking. She clasped them together, trying to steady herself. Because I couldn't watch someone walk into that. Even if what? Even if I didn't know who you were. Even if she swallowed hard. Even if you're dangerous. Something flickered across Romeo's face. Not quite a smile. Not quite approval. You thought I was dangerous, and you warned me anyway. I thought you were human, Claire said quietly. And those men were going to kill you. The silver-haired man cleared his throat. Sir, 2 minutes. Romeo didn't look away from Claire. What did you think would happen? After you gave me that note? I don't know. I didn't think past that moment. I saw what was happening and Her voice cracked. I just couldn't do nothing. Most people can. Romeo studied her face like he was searching for something. Most people are very good at doing nothing. At staying invisible. At protecting themselves. He paused. You chose differently. I chose to not let someone die in front of me. Claire's fear was giving way to something else now. Exhaustion. The crash of adrenaline leaving her system. I didn't choose any of this. No, Romeo agreed. But you're in it now. The words landed with the weight of a verdict. Claire felt her knees wobble. What does that mean? It means you're a witness. To the setup, to the failed hit, to everything that happened here tonight. Romeo's voice was matter of fact. The police are going to want to talk to you. So are Julien Mercier's people, once they realize their operation failed. And they will realize it. They'll want to know how I knew, how their plan fell apart. I'll tell the police I didn't see anything. I'll say, they won't believe you. The silver-haired man spoke for the first time, his tone not unkind. You were working the section. You served the table. There are cameras in the dining room. They'll see you approach, see you leave something. See Monsieur Leroy read it. They'll have questions. Claire's breath came faster. Then what am I supposed to do? That depends, Romeo said. On what? On whether you want to survive this. The room felt too small suddenly, too bright. Claire could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, could feel the panic starting to claw its way up her throat. I just wanted to help. I know. And for the first time, Romeo's voice softened, just barely. And you did. You saved my life, Claire Janae. In my world, that creates a debt. I don't want anything from you. That's not how debts work. He glanced at the silver-haired man. Philippe, status? Philippe checked his phone. Police entering the main building now. Back exit still clear for another 90 seconds. Romeo turned back to Claire. I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that? Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. Do you have somewhere safe to go? Family? Friends outside the city? Someone Mercier's people couldn't easily find? The question made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. Claire thought of her studio apartment in the Marais, her roommate who worked night shifts at a hospital, her mother-in-law who she called every Sunday. All of them suddenly felt exposed. Vulnerable. My mother, she whispered. But I can't bring this to her. Then you have two choices. Romeo's eyes were dark and serious. 1. You stay here, talk to the police, tell them everything you know, and hope Mercier's people don't decide you're worth silencing. It's possible. They might be too busy dealing with their own losses to bother with you. And the second choice? You come with us. Now. We get you somewhere safe until this settles. Then you decide what comes next. Claire stared at him. You want me to just leave? With you? I want you to survive. Romeo pulled a card from his jacket pocket and held it out. This has a number. A secure line. If you choose to stay, if you talk to the police, and if anything happens, anything that makes you feel unsafe, you call it. Someone will come. Claire took the card with trembling fingers. It was matte black, no name, just a phone number embossed in silver. 30 seconds, Philippe said. Romeo was already moving toward a third door Claire hadn't noticed, almost invisible in the brick wall. He stopped at the threshold and looked back. This isn't over, Claire. You're already part of it. The only question is whether you're going to face it alone or not. Then he was gone. Philippe gestured toward the door Elisa had used. That leads to the street. You can leave now. Or, he nodded toward the door Romeo had taken. You can follow him. Claire stood frozen between two exits, her whole life suddenly balanced on a choice she didn't understand. Behind her, she heard voices, police, maybe, or restaurant staff. Ahead, in the darkness beyond that hidden door, was a man she'd saved without knowing why. The card felt heavy in her hand, and Claire Janae made her choice. Claire followed Romeo through the hidden door. The decision happened in her body before her mind could catch up, her feet moving forward, carrying her away from the police voices and fluorescent lights, into a narrow corridor that smelled of concrete and old water pipes. The door clicked shut behind her with a sound like a coffin closing. Philippe appeared at her elbow, his presence somehow both protective and confining. Stay close. Watch your step. The corridor descended sharply. Industrial stairs with metal railings that were cold under Claire's palm. Emergency lighting cast everything in amber. Somewhere above them, muffled by stone and steel, she heard sirens. They emerged into an underground parking garage Claire had never known existed. The air was cooler here, tasting of exhaust and damp earth. A black Mercedes waited with its engine running, rear door open. Romeo was already inside. Philippe gestured for Claire to enter. She hesitated at the threshold, suddenly aware of what this moment meant. Once she got in that car, she couldn't pretend this was just a bizarre night at work. She couldn't go home, crawl into bed, and wake up to her ordinary life. Claire. Romeo's voice came from the dark interior. I won't ask twice. She got in. The door closed with a heavy thunk. Philippe took the front passenger seat. The driver, a woman with short gray hair and the posture of someone military-trained, pulled out smoothly, navigating the garage's exit ramp without urgency. Nothing about their departure suggested flight, just people leaving after dinner. The car's interior was warm, leather seats butter-soft, classical music playing at barely audible volume. Romeo sat with one arm stretched along the back seat, his posture relaxed in a way that seemed impossible given what had just happened. Claire pressed herself against the opposite door, her uniform vest suddenly feeling too tight. They drove in silence for 3 blocks. Then Romeo spoke. You didn't answer my question earlier. Why did you really warn me? Claire turned to look at him. In the passing streetlights, his face was all angles and shadows. I told you, I couldn't watch someone die. That's what you did. I asked why. Those are the same thing. No. Romeo's eyes found hers in the darkness. What you did was an action. Why you did it is something else. Some people freeze. Some people run. Some people convince themselves it's not their problem. He tilted his head. You walked directly into danger to save a stranger. That's not normal, Claire. That's a choice that reveals something. Claire's throat tightened. What does it reveal? That you have a moral compass that overrides your survival instinct. In my world, that makes you either very brave or very stupid. He paused. I haven't decided which yet. Maybe both, Claire said quietly. Romeo's mouth quirked, almost a smile. Maybe. They turned onto a wider boulevard. Through the tinted windows, Paris slid by cafes closing for the night, couples walking hand in hand, the ordinary world continuing as if nothing had happened. As if Claire's entire life hadn't just fractured. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe. A property I own. You'll stay there tonight. Romeo shifted, his attention fully on her now. Tomorrow we'll discuss what comes next. What does come next? That depends on you. Claire's hands twisted in her lap. I don't understand any of this. I don't understand why Julien Mercier wants you dead. I don't understand why you had an army hidden in that restaurant. I don't understand what kind of debt you think I'm owed just because Because you saved my life. Romeo's voice cut through her spiral. In my world, Claire, that's not a small thing. Life debts are binding, sacred. When someone preserves your existence, you become responsible for theirs. I don't want to be your responsibility. Too late. There was no malice in his tone, just certainty. Julien Mercier is dangerous, ruthless, and now he knows his plan failed. He'll want to know why, how. He'll want to know who warned me. Romeo leaned forward slightly. Eventually he'll find out it was you. The word sent ice through Claire's veins. How would he? There were cameras, witnesses, people who saw you approach the table, saw you leave something behind. Mercier has resources, money, connections in places you wouldn't expect. Romeo's expression was serious now, the almost smile gone. If I walk away and leave you unprotected, you become a target, and I don't leave debts unpaid. Claire felt the full weight of what she'd stumbled into. So what am I supposed to do? Hide forever? No, you're supposed to let me handle this. Handle it how? By ending the threat. Romeo said it like he was discussing the weather. Casual. Inevitable. Mercier made a move tonight. It failed. Now it's my turn. Claire stared at him. You're going to kill him. I'm going to eliminate the problem. There's a difference. Is there? For a long moment, Romeo didn't answer. The car turned onto a quieter street, trees forming shadows overhead. Finally, he said, I don't enjoy violence, Claire. But I live in a world where showing mercy is often mistaken for weakness. And weakness gets you killed. His eyes held hers. Mercier has tried to kill me 5 times. He betrayed my trust. He used a woman I cared about as a weapon. And tonight, he would have murdered you to cover his tracks. Romeo's voice was quiet but absolute. So yes, I'm going to end this. And you're going to be safe while I do. The car slowed, turning into an underground garage beneath a building Claire didn't recognize. Elegant. Old money. The kind of place that had doormen and security that actually worked. Philippe opened Claire's door. She stepped out on shaking legs, her server shoes clicking on polished concrete. Romeo emerged from the other side, buttoning his jacket. Philippe will show you to the apartment. There's food, clothes, everything you'll need. You're not a prisoner, but I'd strongly suggest you stay inside until morning. And then what? Romeo walked past her toward a private elevator, then stopped. Then I'll answer your questions. All of them. You deserve to know what you've stepped into. He pressed the elevator call button. But tonight, you're exhausted. In shock, you need rest. I need answers. You'll get them. The elevator doors opened. Romeo stepped inside, then turned. There's one thing you should understand, Claire Genet. In my world, debts work both ways. I owe you my life. But by saving it, you tied yourself to me. Whether you wanted to or not. That's not fair. No, Romeo agreed. But it's the truth. The elevator doors closed. leaving Claire standing with Philippe in a silent garage that smelled of expensive cars and her own fear. Philippe gestured toward a different elevator. "This way, mademoiselle. You'll be safe here. I promise you that." Claire followed because she had no other choice. But safety, she was beginning to understand, was a relative term. And in Romeo Leroy's world, nothing came without a price. Across the city, in a penthouse suite overlooking the Seine, Julien Mercier paced like a caged animal. His phone was dark on the glass table, silent for the past 40 minutes. 40 minutes since his men were supposed to confirm the kill. 40 minutes since Romeo Leroy should have been bleeding out on the pavement behind Côte Lumière. 40 minutes of silence was 40 minutes too long. Julien was a tall man, lean in the way of distance runners, with the kind of sharp features that women found compelling and men found untrustworthy. His dark hair was pushed back from his face, showing the silver just beginning at his temples. He wore €1,000 casual black jeans, a silk shirt unbuttoned at the collar, the uniform of someone who'd clawed his way up from nothing and wanted everyone to know he'd arrived. But tonight, the carefully constructed image was cracking. He reached for his phone again, then stopped himself. Calling would show weakness, desperation. In his world, you never revealed your hand until you knew what cards the other player held. The problem was, he didn't know anymore. His second phone, the burner he used for sensitive communications, buzzed on the sofa. Julien grabbed it like a lifeline. "Tell me." His voice was controlled. Barely. The voice on the other end was rough, breathless. "It went wrong. All of it. They were ready for us." Julien's jaw clenched. Define ready. Leroy had people everywhere. Inside the restaurant, outside, in the buildings across the street. The second we moved into position, they moved on us. Professional, military grade. A pause. "We lost everyone, Julien. All 6 men, contained before they could even draw weapons." The words hit like physical blows. 6 men. 6 trained operatives he'd spent weeks recruiting, positioning, paying. Gone in minutes. What about the woman? Julien's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Tell me Elisa is dead." "I don't know. I wasn't inside. But if they took down our external team that fast, they probably find out." Julien's control was fraying now, his accent thickening. "I need to know if she talked, if she gave me up." "Julien, we need to move. Now. Get out of Paris before." "Before what?" Julien's voice rose. "Before Romeo Leroy comes for me? He's been trying to find me for 6 years. 6 years of hiding, moving, operating from shadows. And I just handed him everything on a fucking silver platter." He ended the call and threw the burner across the room. It shattered against the wall, pieces scattering across imported marble. Julien pressed his palms against the window, staring out at the city that had always felt too small for his ambitions. Paris glittered below him, indifferent to his rage, indifferent to the fact that his carefully laid plan had just collapsed. How had Leroy known? The setup had been perfect. Elisa had confirmed his location. His men were positioned correctly. The timing was exact, and yet somehow, Leroy had not only survived, he'd turned the entire operation into a trap. Someone had warned him. But who? Elisa was too stupid to have second thoughts. His men were loyal, bound to him by money and shared crimes that made betrayal suicide. The restaurant staff wouldn't have noticed anything, unless... Julien's mind raced backward through the evening, through the phone calls with Elisa, through the final confirmation that Leroy was seated, exposed, vulnerable, through the alley. Elisa had been in the alley when she made the final call. Behind the restaurant, in the service area where staff took smoke breaks and hauled trash. Had someone seen her? Overheard her? His third phone rang, the legitimate one, the number his business associates used. Julien almost ignored it, then saw the name on the screen, Laurent Voss, a high-ranking police inspector who supplemented his income by selling information to people like Julien. "Yes. You need to leave Paris." Voss's voice was tight. "Now. Tonight. What happened? What happened is you tried to kill Romeo Leroy in one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, and he embarrassed you. The whole operation is on camera. My colleagues are going through footage right now. They have your men. They have evidence. And Leroy has connections that go higher than mine." Julien's stomach turned. "He won't go to the police. He doesn't work that way. He doesn't have to. He already has everything he needs, your people, your operation, your proof of intent. When he comes for you, it won't be through the legal system." Voss paused. "I can buy you 12 hours. Maybe. After that, I can't protect you." The line went dead. Julien stood frozen, his reflection ghost-like in the window glass. He looked older suddenly. Tired. The silver at his temples seemed to spread before his eyes. 6 years. 6 years of building his empire from nothing. 6 years of carefully constructed alliances, strategic violence, calculated risks. 6 years of hunting Romeo Leroy, the man who'd destroyed his first crew, killed his brother, left him with nothing but rage and ambition. And now, because of one failed hit, it was all unraveling. His mind flashed to Elisa. Beautiful, desperate Elisa. It had been almost too easy to seduce her again, to make her believe he'd spent 3 years regretting leaving her, to convince her that helping him wasn't betrayal, it was salvation. She'd been so eager to believe the lie. Had she survived tonight? Was she in police custody? In Leroy's custody? Or was she already dead, disposed of like the liability she'd always been? Julien grabbed his legitimate phone and dialed a number he'd hoped never to use. It rang twice before a woman answered. Oui? It's Mercier. I need emergency extraction. Paris. Tonight. That's expensive. I know. 2 million euros. Non-negotiable. Julien closed his eyes. 2 million would drain his accessible accounts, would leave him starting over with almost nothing. But starting over alive was better than staying here dead. Done. Send the details. He ended the call and moved through the penthouse with mechanical precision. Grabbed the go-bag he'd kept packed for 6 years. Pulled cash from the hidden safe. Destroyed the SIM cards in his remaining phones. But even as he prepared to run, his mind was spinning. This wasn't over. Leroy thought he'd won. Thought he'd crushed the threat. But Julien Mercier hadn't survived this long by giving up after one failure. He'd regroup. Rebuild. And next time he'd be smarter. More careful. Next time, he'd make sure there were no witnesses. No warnings. No waitresses who saw too much. Because that's what this had to be, didn't it? Someone at the restaurant had seen something. Heard something. Warned Leroy before the hit could happen. Julien pulled up the last photo Elisa had sent him taken from inside Côte Lumière, showing Leroy at his table by the window. He zoomed in, scanning the background. There, in the frame's edge, a woman in server's uniform. Dark hair pulled back. Young, unremarkable, standing at the service station, looking toward Elisa's table. Julien's blood went cold. He took a screenshot, sent it to his one remaining operative, a woman named Céline who specialized in research, not violence. His message was simple. Find out who she is. The response came back in 3 minutes. Claire Genet, age 26, waitress at Côte Lumière, for 8 months. Lives in the Marais. No criminal record, no obvious connections to Leroy. Julien stared at the name. Claire Genet. A nobody. A waitress. Someone who should have been invisible. Someone who'd just destroyed everything he'd built. He saved her information to his encrypted drive, then deleted the messages. But her face was burned into his memory now. Claire Genet had cost him his revenge, his money, his men, his position, and when he came back, when he rebuilt, she'd be the first debt he collected. Julien Mercier grabbed his bag and walked out of the penthouse without looking back, but he carried her name with him into the darkness, and in his world, names were targets. The apartment Romeo had taken Claire to was nothing like her cramped studio in the Marais. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a private courtyard garden. Hardwood floors that probably cost more than her car. Furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was cream and gold and perfectly, intimidatingly clean. Claire stood in the center of the living room, still wearing her rumpled server's uniform, and felt like a stain on expensive fabric. Philippe had left her with instructions. Shower, eat, rest. He'd pointed out the bedroom, the kitchen stocked with food she'd never be able to afford, the closet, with clothes in exactly her size, which should have been comforting but instead felt invasive. How did they know her size? How long had Romeo been planning for contingencies like this? Claire walked to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. Below, the courtyard was empty, lit by antique street lamps that cast everything in amber. It was beautiful, serene, and she felt like she was drowning. Her phone buzzed in her pocket the first time since she'd left the restaurant. She pulled it out with shaking hands. 17 missed calls, 32 texts. Her roommate, "Where are you? Police came by asking about you." Her manager at Côte Lumière, "Claire, call me immediately. This is serious." Her mother, "Chérie, I saw the news about the restaurant. Please tell me you're okay." And one number she didn't recognize. "We know who you are, Claire Genet. We know what you did." The phone slipped from her fingers. clattering against the hardwood. Claire backed away from it like it was a snake, her breath coming fast and shallow. Someone knew. Someone had already found her name, her connections, her life. She grabbed the phone and pulled up the black card Romeo had given her. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number. It rang once. Claire. Romeo's voice was calm, like he'd been expecting her call. What's wrong? Someone texted me. They know my name. They said they know what I did. Read me the number. She did, stumbling over the digits. Silence on the other end. Then, that's one of Mercier's people. He's already hunting you. The room tilted. Claire sat down hard on the cream sofa. How did he find me this fast? You were visible tonight. In the restaurant, near the table. Cameras would have caught you. Romeo's voice was matter of fact. Mercier's smart. He would have reviewed everything, looking for how his plan failed, and he would have found you. So what do I do? Nothing. You stay exactly where you are. Don't respond to that message. Don't call anyone back. Don't go online. A pause. And don't leave that apartment. For how long? Until I tell you it's safe. Claire felt something crack inside her chest. This is my life, Romeo. My mother is worried. My roommate is scared. The police want to talk to me. I can't just disappear. You can, and you will. His voice hardened. Because the alternative is Mercier finds you before I find him. And if that happens, Claire, you don't get to have a life anymore. Do you understand? She understood. God help her. She understood perfectly. I'll have someone reach out to your mother, anonymously. Let her know you're safe, but can't talk yet. Your roommate will be fine. The police don't suspect her of anything. And your manager. Romeo's tone shifted slightly. Côte Lumiere is being compensated for tonight's disruption. You won't be fired. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Claire's voice broke. The point is, I was invisible. Nobody noticed me. Nobody cared who I was or what I did. I was just there, part of the background. And now now you're real, Romeo finished quietly. Now you matter. And that terrifies you. The words hit harder than she expected. Claire pressed her hand over her mouth, fighting tears. Because he was right. She'd spent 26 years being forgettable. Average height, average looks, average job. She'd never been the smartest or the prettiest or the most talented. She'd just been Claire, invisible. Claire, who served expensive dinners and went home alone and never made waves. And in one night, she'd become someone people were hunting. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. I know. Romeo's voice was gentler now. But you chose it anyway. When you followed Elisa outside, when you slipped me that note, you chose to be seen. I chose to save your life. Same thing. Claire wiped at her eyes roughly. Is it always like this? Your world? This violent? This scary? Yes, the honesty was almost worse than a lie would have been. How do you live like this? Claire asked. You learn to accept it. That violence isn't the exception, it's the baseline. That trust is earned in blood. That the people who want you dead are sometimes the ones sleeping beside you. He paused. And you learn that the only way to survive is to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than everyone trying to kill you. I'm not any of those things. No, but I am. Romeo's voice was absolute. Which is why you're going to stay in that apartment. Stay safe. And let me handle Julien Mercier. Claire looked around the beautiful prison she'd walked into. And then what? After you handle him? Then you get to decide who you want to be. What does that mean? It means you have a choice, Claire. You can go back to being invisible, back to your apartment, your job, your ordinary life. I'll make sure you're protected, that no one ever connects you to tonight. You'll be safe. Or, Romeo was quiet for a long moment. Or you accept that you're not invisible anymore, that you've seen too much, learned too much, to pretend you don't understand how the world really works, and you decide what you want to do with that knowledge. Claire's throat tightened. You're asking me to choose a life I don't understand. I'm asking you to acknowledge the life you've already chosen. By slipping me that note, you stepped across a line most people never even see. Now you're on the other side. The only question is whether you're going to spend the rest of your life running from it or learning to navigate it. That's not fair. Nothing about tonight has been fair. Romeo's voice was firm but not cruel. But it's real. And ignoring reality doesn't make it go away, it just makes you vulnerable to it. Claire stared at her reflection in the darkened window. She looked small, lost, nothing like someone who belonged in this world of violence and debts and impossible choices, but she also looked alive, more alive than she'd felt in years. "Get some rest," Romeo said. "Tomorrow we'll talk more. For tonight you're safe. I promise you that." "How can you promise that?" "Because anyone who wants to hurt you has to go through me first." "And Claire?" His voice dropped lower. "I don't lose." The line went dead. Claire sat in the silent apartment, her phone dark in her hand, and finally let herself cry. Not from fear, though fear was there. Not from anger, though anger was there too. But from the terrifying realization that Romeo was right. She wasn't invisible anymore. She'd never be invisible again. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and confusion and exhaustion, a small part of her wondered if maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to be. Morning came to Paris in shades of pearl and gold. Claire woke in a bed that felt like sleeping on clouds, in a room that smelled faintly of lavender, to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to close. For 3 perfect seconds, she thought last night had been a nightmare. Then she saw her server's uniform crumpled on the chair, and reality crashed back. She showered in a bathroom with heated floors and water pressure that felt like a massage. Found clothes in the closet that fit perfectly: black jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, boots that were broken in but quality. Someone had thought of everything. It made her skin crawl. The kitchen was equally perfect. Fresh croissants in a warming drawer, coffee that ground itself at the touch of a button, orange juice that probably cost more per glass than she made in an hour. Claire ate standing at the counter, too nervous to sit, watching the courtyard below for threats she wouldn't recognize if she saw them. At precisely 9 o'clock, the apartment door opened. Claire spun, heart hammering, but it was Philippe. He carried a leather folder and the same calm competence he'd shown last night. "Mademoiselle Genet, I trust you slept well?" "Not really." "Understandable." He set the folder on the counter. "Monsieur Leroy will be here within the hour. He wanted me to brief you first on what's happened since last night." Claire's stomach tightened. "Mercier has left Paris. We tracked him to a private airfield outside the city. He boarded a plane to Marseille at 4 this morning." Philippe's expression was neutral. "He's running. That's good, right? It's expected. But it doesn't mean he's no longer a threat, just a more distant one." Philippe opened the folder, revealing documents and photographs. Claire saw images of Julien Mercier, sharp-featured, silver-templed, younger than she'd expected. Crime scene photos from the restaurant, police reports with sections redacted in black, and a photograph of herself, taken from restaurant security footage, slipping the note beside Romeo's glass. "This image has been suppressed," Philippe said. "It won't appear in any official reports. As far as the police investigation is concerned, you were working your section normally. You saw nothing unusual. You have no relevant information. How did you—" "Monsieur Leroy has resources." Philippe's tone suggested she shouldn't ask further questions. "The 6 men Mercier sent have been charged with conspiracy and weapons violations. They'll be in prison for years, but none of them are talking. Which means Mercier still doesn't know for sure," I warned Romeo. "Correct. He suspects. The threatening message you received confirms that. But he has no proof. And without proof, you're not worth the risk of targeting openly." Philippe paused. "However, if you were to surface publicly, speak to press, testify in court, anything that confirms your involvement, that calculation changes." Claire felt the cage close tighter. "So I just hide? Forever?" "Not forever. Just until—" The apartment door opened again. Romeo entered like he owned the space, which he did. He'd changed since last night: dark jeans, a fitted black shirt, casual but somehow more intimidating than the suit. His tattoos were visible now, crawling up his neck and disappearing under his collar. He looked younger in daylight. Harder. "Philippe, give us the room." Philippe nodded and left without a word, taking the folder with him. Romeo walked to the kitchen, poured himself coffee with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "You look better, more rested." "I look terrified." "That too." He leaned against the counter, studying her. "But alive, that's what matters." Claire crossed her arms. "Philippe says Mercier left Paris." "He did. So it's over." "No." Romeo's voice was flat. "It's just beginning." The words sent ice through her chest. "What does that mean?" "It means Julien Mercier spent 6 years building an organization designed to destroy me. Last night was just one move in a much longer game." Romeo sipped his coffee. "He failed. He lost resources. He's wounded, but he's not dead. and wounded animals are the most dangerous. So what happens now? Now I finish what he started. Romeo set down his cup. I've been playing defense for 6 years, reacting to his moves, protecting my interests. But last night changed the rules. He went after me in public. He involved innocent people. He showed me exactly how desperate he's become. And desperation makes people predictable. Romeo's eyes were dark, calculating. I know where he'll run, who he'll contact, what resources he has left, and I'm going to systematically dismantle everything he's built until he has nowhere left to hide. Claire's voice came out smaller than she intended. You're going to kill him. I'm going to remove the threat he represents. How that happens depends on the choices he makes. That's the same thing. Romeo pushed off the counter, closing the distance between them. No, it's not. If Mercier surrenders, if he leaves France, abandons his vendetta, disappears completely, I'll let him live. Broken, but alive. He stopped 2 feet from her. But if he keeps coming, if he keeps threatening people under my protection, then yes, I'll kill him, because that's what survival looks like in my world. Claire met his eyes. And what about my world? What about it? You keep talking about your world, your rules, your debts. But I don't live in that world. I live in a place where people don't solve problems with violence, where debts are money, not blood, where you're not safe anymore. Romeo's voice cut through her protest. You want to go back to that world? Fine, I'll arrange it. New identity if necessary. Relocation, financial support. You'll be invisible again. But you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if Mercier's people found you, if the next stranger on the street is the one who finally tracked you down. Romeo's expression was serious. Because you can leave my world, Claire, but my world won't leave you, not after last night. So I'm just stuck? A prisoner? You're protected. There's a difference. Is there? Claire's voice rose. Because it feels the same from where I'm standing. Romeo was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you want me to say? That I'm sorry you saved my life? That I wish you'd stayed invisible? I want you to tell me the truth. The truth is, you made a choice last night that revealed something about who you are. Something most people spend their whole lives hiding. Romeo's voice softened. You saw injustice happening and you acted. You risked your safety for a stranger. That's not weakness, Claire. That's strength. Rare, dangerous strength. It doesn't feel strong. It feels stupid. Most courage does. In the moment. He stepped back, giving her space. I can't give you your old life back. That's gone. But I can give you something else. What? Purpose. Training. A chance to understand the world you've stepped into. To learn how to navigate it, instead of being victimized by it. Romeo's eyes held hers. Or I can give you money and distance and hope that's enough. The choice is yours. Claire stared at him. You want me to? What? Work for you? I want you to work with me. Learn from me. Become someone who doesn't have to hide. Romeo's voice was steady. You saved my life, Claire. Let me return the favor by teaching you how to protect your own. The offer hung between them, impossible and terrifying. Claire thought about her studio apartment, her minimum wage job, her invisible life where nothing ever happened and nothing ever would. Then she thought about the way she'd felt last night, terrified. Yes, but also alive. More alive than she'd been in years. I need time to think. You have until Mercier makes his next move. After that, you'll need to be ready. Romeo walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you're stronger than you believe. You just haven't had a reason to find out yet. And if I'm not, then you'll learn, or you'll die. He said it without cruelty. Just fact. That's how my world works. The door closed behind him, leaving Claire alone with the most important decision of her life, and no idea which choice would save her. 3 days later, Claire stood in a private training facility beneath one of Romeo's legitimate businesses, a security consulting firm that operated 3 floors above their heads. The space was industrial. Concrete floors, fluorescent lighting, equipment that looked both expensive and intimidating. Punching bags hung from reinforced beams. Weapons lined one wall behind glass. Exercise mats covered half the floor. And Claire, still wearing the clothes someone else had chosen for her, felt completely out of place. Philippe stood beside a compact woman with silver-shot hair and the posture of someone who'd seen combat. This is Simone. She'll be handling your training. Simone looked Claire up and down with the clinical assessment of a surgeon examining a patient. You're smaller than I expected. Good. People underestimate small. Training for what? Claire's voice sounded thin in the large space. Survival. Simone began walking a slow circle around her. Situational awareness, self-defense, threat assessment, how to disappear in a crowd, how to spot surveillance, how to know when someone wants to kill you before they get close enough to try. Claire's stomach turned. This is insane. This is necessary. Romeo's voice came from the doorway. He entered with the same quiet confidence he brought everywhere, dressed for training in dark athletic wear that made him look even more dangerous. Mercier is still out there. His organization is wounded but operational, and you're still a target. You said he left Paris. He did, but he'll come back. Or he'll send someone. And when that happens, you need to be ready. I can't fight. Claire's hands were shaking now. I can barely throw a punch. How am I supposed to? You're not supposed to fight. Simone's voice was firm but not unkind. You're supposed to survive long enough for help to arrive. Big difference. She demonstrated quick, efficient movements that looked more like dance than violence. How to break a grip. How to create distance. How to use everyday objects as weapons. Your advantage is surprise, Simone explained. Nobody expects the waitress to fight back. So when you do, you make it count. For 2 hours, Claire learned. Her body protested every movement. She fell more than she succeeded. But slowly, something began to shift. Not confidence. Not yet. But understanding. She was beginning to see the world the way Romeo saw it. As a chessboard where every person was a piece and every decision had consequences 3 moves ahead. When Simone finally called a break, Claire collapsed on a bench, sweating and sore and more exhausted than she'd been in her life. Romeo approached, handing her water. You're doing better than I expected. I'm terrible. You're learning. That's different. He sat beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. Most people freeze when confronted with violence. You didn't. Even now, scared and sore, you're still here, still trying, because I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. Romeo's voice was quiet. You could have walked away 3 days ago, gone to the police, taken your chances with witness protection. But you didn't. Why didn't I? You tell me. Claire stared at her hands. They were red where she'd gripped the training equipment too hard. Because you were right, about everything. I can't go back to being invisible. Not after what I've seen, what I've learned. She looked up at him. And because I'm tired of being afraid. Something shifted in Romeo's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. That's the first honest thing you've said since you got here. So what happens now? Now you train. You learn. You become someone who doesn't need protection because you can protect yourself. Romeo stood, offering his hand to help her up. And when Mercier makes his move, and he will, you'll be ready. Claire took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. His grip was strong, steady, certain. You really think I can do this? I think you already did. The hard part. Romeo's eyes held hers. You chose to be seen. Everything after that is just learning how to survive it. Over the following weeks, Claire's life became something unrecognizable. She trained every morning with Simone until her muscles screamed. She learned to read rooms the way Romeo did, cataloging exits, identifying threats, calculating odds. She studied the networks that underlay Paris's criminal ecosystem, understanding for the first time how power really worked. And slowly, painfully, she began to change. Not into someone violent, not into someone who enjoyed the danger, but into someone who could navigate it. One morning, Philippe arrived with news. Mercier surfaced. Marseille. He made contact with an old associate. Claire felt her pulse spike, but she didn't freeze. What kind of contact? The kind that suggests he's planning something. Regrouping. Philippe's expression was neutral. Monsieur Leroy is handling it. How? You don't need those details, but Claire did. She needed to understand exactly what handling it meant in Romeo's world. She found him in his office, a minimalist space of glass and steel overlooking the city. He was on the phone speaking rapid French, but he gestured for her to enter. When he finished the call, he turned to face her. You heard. I heard. What does handling it mean? It means Mercier's attempt to rebuild is being systematically dismantled. His financing is frozen. His contacts are disappearing. His safe houses are being exposed. Romeo's voice was matter of fact. In 3 days, he'll have nothing left but surrender or death. And if he surrenders? Then he lives, in exile, broken. Romeo studied her face. You disapprove. I don't know what I think anymore. Claire walked to the window, looking out at Paris spread below them. A month ago I served food. I smiled at customers. I went home alone. Now I'm learning how to identify surveillance and disable attackers, and I'm standing in the office of a man who's destroying someone's entire life. He tried to destroy mine first. I know. Claire pressed her forehead against the glass. I just wonder who I'm becoming. Romeo came to stand beside her. You're becoming someone who understands that morality isn't simple. That protecting the people you care about sometimes requires difficult choices. That survival isn't always clean. Is that supposed to be comforting? No, it's supposed to be true. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city. Then Claire said quietly, Thank you. For what? For not letting me die. For teaching me to survive. She struggled for words. For seeing me when I needed to be seen. Romeo's expression softened. You saved my life, Claire. Everything after that is just me returning the favor. Is it? She turned to face him. Or is it something else? The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to name. Before Romeo could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. It's done. Mercier surrendered. Claire felt something release in her chest. So it's over. For now. Romeo pocketed the phone. He's leaving France, Europe. We've arranged passage to South America with the understanding that if he ever returns, the deal is void. And you believe he'll honor that? I believe he wants to live more than he wants revenge. Romeo's voice was certain. And if I'm wrong, I'll handle it. Claire nodded slowly. What happens to me now? That's your choice. Romeo moved closer. You can go back. Resume your life. I'll make sure you're protected, even from a distance. Or you stay. Keep training. Keep learning. His eyes held hers. I could use someone with your instincts. Someone who sees what others miss. Someone who acts when action is required. You want me to work for you. I want you to work with me. As a partner. Not an employee. The offer was impossible. Insane. Everything Claire had been raised to believe she shouldn't want. But standing in that office, looking at the man who'd changed everything by simply surviving her warning, she realized something fundamental. She didn't want her old life back. She wanted this one. I'll stay, Claire said, but on one condition. Name it. You teach me everything. No secrets. No protection. I want to understand this world completely. Romeo smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Deal. He offered his hand. Claire took it, sealing a partnership that had begun with a folded receipt and 7 words. Outside the window, Paris glittered in afternoon light. The same city she'd always known but would never see the same way again. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was Claire Genet, the woman who'd changed the board, saved a life, and found her own in the process. And that, she was beginning to understand, was exactly who she was meant to be. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.